Hi, my name is David Johnson. I'm a licensed married family child therapist. And I just started a series on breakups, both sides, the one that doesn't want to leave the relationship for fear of hurting the other person, or the heartbreak, confusion, unanswered questions, sometimes like feeling like you've been punched in the stomach, trying to move on with some kind of clarity and self-respect. If you've ever loved deeply or lost painfully, you're not alone. So hope you'll join me each week. Each week in my series, I'm going to be sharing lessons I've learned both from my own relationships and from the people I've had the privilege to counsel. This mini series is about ending relationships, specifically the emotional experience on both sides, whether it's a short term relationship or a longer one that has lasted for years with deep roots in the family and friends. But I'm going to begin with the partner who didn't want the relationship to end, the one who was left behind, heartbroken, rejected, filled with unanswered questions, and carrying a profound sense of grief and loss. Often there's a deep wound to self-esteem. And for the long-term breakup, separation or divorce, often from an affair, there's a deep betrayal, broken trust, and a profound sense of losing long-held security. Whether it's on both sides, the most important thing is at the end to find meaning in moving on. So what really happens when a relationship ends? What causes it to end? There's a lot of reasons, but I'm just going to focus on one of those, one I hear often from my clients. I'm calling this brief session when sharing too much pushes love away. So what happens when a partner believes to have emotional intimacy, he or she has to share it all? I've heard my clients say things like, if I'm completely honest and share every little doubt, anxiety, fear, background, my triggers, there's going to be more trust. No secrets. That's how we stay close, right? That's what they were saying. So even when a partner says, I need space, they lean in harder. They try to explain, reassure, fix, talk it out. Not because they're trying to control, but because they care and they're scared. They believe closeness can be recreated by effort. So here's what actually happens. Those intense, anxious emotions begin to flood the relationship. The more anxious they feel, the harder they try to connect. Anxiety takes the wheel. And that genuine desire for closeness begins to come across as overwhelming, even smothering, possessive. The partner needs space, feels pushed. Eventually it becomes emotionally unsafe to express anything honestly. Instead of truth, what you get is often placating, shutting down, retreating. And it's not because the connection isn't real, but because pressure and fear have replaced connection and curiosity. And here's the realization I wish someone had taught me much earlier in my life. You really cannot force emotional closeness. You cannot push someone into understanding you, loving you, or coming back before they are ready. Readiness is something internal and something that takes time, work, or healing. I see this especially with some of my clients that it happens to all of us that, we want to share to connect, but we really are trying to soothe our own fears. I learned this personally for myself. I had 5 brothers and 2 sisters. Some have passed now. But and my parents weren't able to have the emotional space to tune into each of us. I developed an anxious attachment style. When I feared losing love, I clung tighter. I talked more. I tried to prove I mattered. For some people, though, it's trauma. For others, it's a pattern that they've learned long before their first love. For others, it's that inner voice whispering, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I don't matter. For me, it was significance. I was always trying to prove that I mattered. So here's the takeaway. Closeness requires safety, not pressure. You can invite someone in, you can express your heart honestly, but you cannot push someone into intimacy. Your healing begins not in convincing them to return, but in understanding what your heart was trying to hold on to and how to hold yourself with that same tenderness. So until next time,